Hey guys, it's Christian from Emotions in Wine. So sometimes back, someone called me the terrorist. From now on, it will be my nickname, and it's making very lot of sense to start to use it in this video in particular, when we have to talk about terroirs and climate. And what better than 2026? This vintage is looking very tough, very challenging, a bit everywhere because of the climate. So it's time to help you have a guidance how to navigate these tough vintages. We saw already several in the last few, but this year is really a key point, turning point. So you need to pay attention to many details. I will try to summarize in this video all the most important things that you need to check to avoid drinking flat beer wines, flat, very alcoholic, with little even aromas and flavors, which is happening more and more already, especially in some regions. So you really need to know the three important pillars that can make the difference even in challenging situations, in challenging regions. Reminding always, as the three pillars will show you, that there are the exceptions. There is nothing absolute, and that utmost respect for the farmers. But of course, some are unlucky, will be in tougher conditions in the future to come. So we as drinkers need also to consider all these aspects, because in the end we pay with our money. So which are these three pillars? First of all, the DNA of the winery. So the artisan, or anyway the quality driven farming winery, having possibly also a certain history and heritage, being able to interpret the vintages, so to act, because that is a key point, as I repeat in many videos. You need to be able to follow what nature is giving to you. You can always adapt. Of course, the result may be just okay, but at least you can save even tougher situations. So that is the number one thing. The number two is, of course, where you are, what you have. So heritage of old vines, digging deep into the soil, and the kind of landscape, even altitude, and then kind of grapes, if they are earlier or later ripening, and if they were born there or if they are international grapes and therefore may be less adapted to the terroir conditions. So all these play a big role in the final result. And the last, of course, is really the terroir. So besides the altitudes, nowadays, this is the first statement we can do certainly. Low valleys, low altitudes, wherever around Europe, are struggling crazily because the heat is more and the acidity easily drops. So higher altitudes are a necessity in this case. Spain teaches. They moved to higher regions already in the last decade or so. You have more and more 800, even 1000 meters, 600 in several regions in Spain. That is a solution. The soil, so volcanic or anyway very rocky, can help a lot, giving more acidity to the grapes, as you've seen in some recent videos, or anyway giving more structure, so, and making the plants struggle more, digging into the rocks to find nutrients and water. All these aspects can help a lot. I noted that there are many of you guys still following, even with certain regularity, but not subscribing, not helping. I'm here to give you free important information, like in this video also, besides the tasting and everything, all for free. I just need your help to share with other interested people very much into wine, and to help us grow with the algorithm, because it's not easy and we need to start to make some money to be able to travel more and to buy more bottles, to give you more of all this quality that we are giving, with a different angle, different point of view from everybody else. So please like, share, subscribe. We need everything to grow and to give the signal clear to the algorithm. Thank you very much. So now that you know the general picture and the three pillars, let's enter a bit in details. There is, for the first time ever, started harvest in Franciacorta in Lombardy in Italy, where they make the sparkling traditional method, end of July. In Budapest, the Danube reached the record low, I guess, ever, because the drought above the Alps, so north of the Alps, so Austria, Switzerland, Hungary, is even worse than in the North Italy or Balkans and so on. So as you see, a lot of very tough situations. So the most affected, as hinted, are the lower. So for sure, many regions in North Italy, in South France, Hungarian regions that are not that high, and especially in the southern part, even some Austrian in this kind of case, because it's warmer and even drier. So very complicated. Also, those regions are never used to that kind of extremes. It's not like the Mediterranean one. So that is furthering the problem. In France, they had a lot of hot, especially in the first part. Now seems to be better. Is recurring in the last years, but France is still huge. The northern regions may still be okay, but the south for sure is very affected. Spain normally, but remember that Spain was hot and dry historically. Most of our indigenous varieties adapted, like is happening in many other Mediterranean regions. So those can still survive better. And as I hinted before, in many cases they are going higher. Even in Rioja and Ribera, you have more and more Rioja Alta, 4, 5, 600, 700 meters. So that helps to retain acidity and also to have more excursion day and night. So which are the regions that should strive better than the others and that I see as the winners in this situation? As I hinted already, those that are more used to hot and dry, where there are the indigenous varieties adapted naturally, more there, so adapted already. Of course, if it's getting more extreme, it will be a problem also, but less than, for example, Chardonnay, Pinot Gris, or grapes like those that are not used to hot climates, dry climates. So Etna, with all its characteristics and their high altitudes. Then Sardinia in general, higher altitudes, but also incredible places like in the south, Carignano de Sulcis, where it's usually hot and dry, so it doesn't change that much. Irpinia in Campania, so in the southern Italian peninsula, but inner below the mountains, even there some higher altitudes. Many cases these soils are very rocky also, that as said before helps, but then is also the climatic conditions and the grapes. Then in several cases late ripening grapes. In Irpinia in particular, they ripen in October, so they overtake this tough season of July, August. Balkans, more or less, this year in particular, we see Slovenia and Croatia holding, especially in the north, but the coastal regions of Croatia are a bit something special, not because I am partisan in this. It's really true, as I hinted many times, especially some islands like Corčula, the microclimate is incredible. Even this year so far, some of these spots never reached more than 35 degrees or so. Even in Zagreb, more than 37 was never. It's because of many characteristics. I will hint a couple of the climatic trends that contribute in this. And also in Croatia, you have several late ripening grapes and naturally high acidity in many of these. Then the French Alps, high altitudes with local varieties mostly, also becoming more and more interesting and attractive and gaining a bit more structure because of these hotter seasons. So high altitudes are the key everywhere. So even Alto Adige, the upper parts for sure benefiting a bit. In those cases, can be even really said benefit, of course, not the drought, but I mean warmer. So even northern Piedmont, in this we can talk about Val d'Aosta, so the corner of Italy near France and Switzerland. Therefore, some Swiss, Austrian less, because majority of Austrian regions are tendentially lower altitudes. So I think they will struggle more. Germany is further north, not the high in general, but being further north that helps because they get warmer but not crazy, so that can help to get a bit more structure, more sugar, and more ripeness in the fruit. That's why many Pinot Noirs are becoming more and more popular from there. So you see how there are pros and cons as everything in nature, and as I repeated in many videos, nature always finds a way. So that will help some regions to sort it out somehow. Of course, some will be handicapped no matter what, because if this is the kind of climate that you get in a season, those really unlucky locations with early ripening and not adaptable grapes to hot and dry will not be able to deliver good quality. They will just survive. Or maybe slowly vineyards will be also uprooted, who knows? So what is this climatic trend mostly? The first point is the African anticyclone, which is more and more aggressive in the southern European mostly, but touching also a bit central or northern parts, is more frequent and more prolonged. That is the key problem also because it is reducing the precipitation. So there is less rain because when it is so strong, the rain from Atlantic cannot get into the continent. So this is the number one trend. But there is a counterbalance, which is helping the Balkans in particular. The Bura wind, Bora called in Italy, which is famous coming from Urals up there in Russia, has always affected Balkans, Croatia, mostly Slovenia and northeast of Italy, but Croatia in particular, cooling, northern winds, drying up, cleaning. This is what happened even in this moment, in these couple of days. Temperatures drop, dry up, but of course, it's not bringing automatically rain. That is the other issue that is not being solved by that. But that for sure helps, at least to lower the temperatures, to have more excursion overnight. So this is one of the key, is more frequent actually lately. Is a sort of reaction probably with the cyclone pushing up and this trend from the north coming down to rebalance and to push. In fact, this is the main reason the African anticyclone is more affecting the Iberian Peninsula and France and Italy than this side, the eastern part of Europe. So we can say that this part of the Balkan is a bit more protected. Drier also in the humidity terms, because in Italy or other regions there is much more humidity than in Croatia in particular. But unfortunately, the production is very tiny, so the export of Croatian wines will always be still tiny. You may think, so then the Northern European new emerging regions like England, Belgium, and others are the advantage? I don't agree. Of course, it's all to be seen. This is just a theory, but I don't agree for two main reasons. The first, they don't have experience, heritage, old vines. The grapes are not from there, they are imported. So there is not the adaptation of the natural environment. It will take ages for that. So it doesn't mean that it is able to strive well. Of course, climatically seems more favorable, but there is the other handicap, the number two issue. The biggest point of all this climatic change, besides the extremes of summer, is that the mid-seasons are collapsing. We are having less and less spring and autumn. It's more and more cold in May and rainy, and then you jump almost to summer in 1 month. Autumn, maybe not that cold, but oftentimes already after 1st November, winter, and raining a lot, heavy rains. That is the problem for the extreme regions, because those more north will be affected much more by the frost in spring. Already the normal regions like North Italy, Austria, France are affected by the problem in April, May. So that is a big issue. More north, even more. Second, colder or wetter in autumn. If it's later harvest, is a problem anywhere. This is a problem still also in regions like Irpinia I mentioned, that is very famous for the late harvesting of all the grapes, all indigenous. When it's a colder and very wet October, let's say, that of course is a big trouble. Tokaj in Hungary has this kind of case, and they had several times in recent years very rainy Octobers. So that made a lot of problems with the diseases. So you see there are many, many components. So there are still ways to find good regions even in a bad vintage. But compared to the past, we can say there is a more standard trend line, at least for many regions, if not all. So more attention is needed always. And try to go as much as possible for the higher altitudes later ripening grapes, those specific regions which are already adapted to the Mediterranean climate, and they have naturally high acidity and they can hold even the drought. So those probably are the most interesting in the years to come, especially volcanic or very rocky, as we said at the beginning. Canaries, I think, will remain one of the big winners because there is very dry always and quite warm, but there is the Atlantic breeze, the excursion, the altitudes. I think is a tiny region anyway, a few islands, but that I think will be the absolute winner. And how about Portugal? You may wonder. Maybe is really stealing even the very best place to Canaries, being also on the Atlantic. This is another topic. As I said in several videos about Portugal, it is still very underrated. It's not that small country also, the production is quite decent. So it deserves a special chapter with a tasting example, and you will discover what is going on there and if it's really the best option overall in Europe. I hope you enjoyed this video, a bit also forecasting my views, but a lot of data and reality of what is going on and how you need to be more careful in picking, even for the reds that are usually harvested later. Is not an easy task to hold the acidity in these situations. So read, check, because I have already some disappointing wines in the last years with the 22 vintage or 24, which were warmer in several regions. And I'm avoiding, in general, in this kind of vintages, those regions at this point. Unless I know specifically the winery, how it works, and maybe located in a better spot, more north-facing vineyards now. You will see next video about that. Will be a curious comparison of a grape from two neighboring regions and one with the north-facing vineyards. So, a lot changing, a lot to pay attention more. Stay up to date, stay tuned, follow us, and see you next time. Salute, guys.